Hey everyone, Mica here, and it's that time again where we're going to sit back and have a little chat about the classes of Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, and this week we're going to continue our magical journey with Summoner. Now, before I begin, I do want to say I know I've been a little bit absentee lately. I actually have a very good reason for that, and that is because I've spoken before how I have other stuff in the works and how I want to expand this channel, and that is actually going to start happening very, very soon here, probably within the next week or so, because this is Mica Does Stuff, so I got to be able to talk about more than just Pantheon. So I'm gonna be posting stuff about Pantheon, of course, but I'm also gonna post stuff about other games and stuff that just has to do with life and living and being a big nerd and all that fun stuff. So look forward to it because it's coming very, very soon, and I hope you join me in future videos. Anyway, you are not here for me babbling on about that, so let's get into Summoner. It is a curious thing to reach a hand into realities other than your own. This is the art of the Summoner, whose hand then brings forth all manner of things that did not exist only moments before. The Summoner's command of arcane conjuration is unrivaled, able to bring forth sustenance, tools, barricades, weaponry, even fantastic creatures of incredible strength and ability. All of this at their whim. These descriptions are always either really intriguing or really kind of meh. There's never any middle ground. Anywho, there are 4 races that can summon: the Dark Mirror, the Elves, the Gnomes, and again, the humans, because humans can always do whatever they want. Summoners also have 2 resources to manage: mana and Arca mental control. And I need to talk here a moment about Arca mental control because Arca mentals are your actual summon. They are the spirit you bring forth to do your bidding. So Arca mental control is the ability to control them. Why it's listed as a resource, I don't know. Maybe they're looking at the Arca mental themselves as a resource, but it doesn't. There's nothing on this description that talks about Arca mental control being a resource in and of itself like mana. There's nothing listed as control costs or as regenerating control or anything like that. So I'm assuming Arca mental control is more like an ability you have with druid or shaman when it comes to like controlling your pets, and not something that's actually quantifiable that you build and replenish and yada yada. So I just didn't want you to be confused about that, because why it's listed as a resource and not ability, I have no clue. It's kind of ambiguous. But what's not ambiguous is that a summoner can wear only cloth armor and use single-handed blunt and piercing weapons, 2-handed staves, and some shields. But really, that's all there is to say about that, because we know you ain't gonna be poking anything anytime soon. So let's just focus on abilities, and I'm gonna split them between the 4 Arcamentals before coming together with the abilities that affect all pets, and then ending with your own personal abilities. Let's start with Zephyr, which is your air Arcamental, and it says she specializes in close ranged physical and nature damage. 2 of her listed abilities are passive, and those are Whistling Winds, which will allow her to dual wield and double attack, and Wind Woven, which will raise her evasion to melee attacks, both of which depend on her quickness and her power. If she is behind an enemy, she can execute Wind Blade, which is just a basic high-powered attack, and then there are 3 abilities that you can command her to use. Gale Step will tell her to move behind a target, Updraft will boost your movement speed, and Wind Lance will deal nature-based damage depending on how far she is away from a target. And I must put in here that the farther away you are from the target, the more damage it will deal. Next we have Fury, which is your fire-based Arcamental and your DPS powerhouse. His passives are even DPS moves. Burning Aura gives him just that, a burning aura, and anything within range of him will take damage, so it's probably not best to run around with him out, especially in a crowded area. I mean, especially since you can't control this move. Fire's Rage is the other passive, and it causes Fury to do more damage the lower his health goes. Fury can also activate an ability called Molten Spear on his own, which will just inflict damage, and Cinder Blast will do the exact same thing, but it doesn't say if you activate it or if this is something he just does. But one thing you can activate is Bear and Burn, which will cause Fury to explode and do AoE fire damage but not die. Now, what's so good about this one is that he will also take damage, which means, thanks to the previously mentioned Fire's Rage, all of his other abilities will then do more damage. This one is basically going to be a must-use anytime you have him out, especially if the mob is focused on your party's tank and he wouldn't be taking damage otherwise. Just make sure that Undine does not heal him. Then we have Titan, your very own little tank, and hopefully not another chicken nugget. Like the others, he has two passives listed. Mineral Embrittlement is the first one. It will allow his attacks to lower an enemy's armor class for a short time, and Protector's Purpose, which will increase his armor class based on your own. Mighty Slam is an ability Titan will activate, and it will just deal nature and physical damage. And then there are three that you have control over. Shifting Stones, which will root an enemy in place, but of course any damage they take will have a chance of breaking this binding. Grapple, which is just basically Titan's Provoke, and Lasso of Vines, which will pull an enemy to his location. And finally, we're going to look at Undine, who is your water and your healing Archamental, and she also seems like she's going to be the one you're going to have out almost all the time, since you're going to be able to have her active alongside another Archamental after you learn the Archamental Mastery ability. But for Undine specific abilities, we are going to begin with Crystalline Water, which is a passive that makes her immune to poison and disease. Everflowing is her other passive that will give her an incredibly high health regen. Undine can also activate two abilities on her own, the first one being Water Lash, which will cause damage to an enemy while healing you and the other Archamental if you have one summoned, and Crystalline Spear, which will inflict cold and physical damage while also inflicting a slow effect on your enemy. Then there are three effects that you can activate, which all require you to have another Archamental summon to complete. Healing Jetstream requires and heals Saphir while also increasing her attack speed. Protective Clouding requires Fury, giving him a regen effect and a boost to his evasion. And finally, Crystalline Mending requires Titan and will not only heal him, but it will also absorb any damage that comes his way for a short time. So basically, Undine will be your own personal little healer. Obviously, or hopefully anyway, she won't replace a full healer, but she will likely make Summoner the most solo-friendly job we have seen so far. Summoner also has a bunch of non-pet specific abilities. Archamental Command, for instance, will bring your Archamental to you instantly from any distance, and Summon Archamental Weaponry or Armor will literally do just that. Summon weapons and armor for your Archamental, and the variety of which will expand as you get more powerful. There are also 4 augments listed. Quickening, which will increase your Archamental's quickness. I know, who would have thunk. Density will increase their solidarity. No idea what that means. Force will increase its power and metabolize its energy. And you can apply as many augments as you want, but after you apply the first one, any additional augment will come with the risk of your Archamental destabilizing and therefore being destroyed. But now that we have that pesky pet stuff out of the way, we can get into the non-pet abilities, and funnily enough, many of these are more interesting than the Archamental stuff. So I'm going to get the more boring ones out of the way first, like Mana Shield, which will just create a shield of mana around you that keeps you safe from magic attacks, or Shield of Spinning Blades, which will cause damage to any mob that dares come close enough to inflict physical damage to whichever ally you cast this on. Phase will open a portal that you can step through and cleanse yourself of all buffs and debuffs, and Reciprocation will open yet another portal to bounce magic damage back at its caster. Now we have one of the good ones, and guild leaders, you should pay attention here, because Escape Portal is basically the ability we're going to use to play a condensed form of the game Portal in Pantheon. Because you can, so what you do with this is you place one portal in one spot, and then you can go to another spot, open another portal, step through, and go instantly back to that spot. Now the reason I said it's good to pay attention is if you use this one creatively, this has the potential to be able to create some really fun guild events. I mean, you could use this in so many ways if it's able to be used out of combat anyway, and you can find the right location to do it in. Mana Bomb will bind a bomb to your target, causing damage to that target and anything around it. Mana Boomerang will create a blast of mana that will deal damage as it goes away and back to you. Glacier, Shard, and Avalanche are both charged abilities, and the longer you charge them, the more powerful and costly they become, but they basically do the same thing, as in cause damage. But Shard is single target, where Avalanche is AoE. Summoner also has a ton of minor summons that will call random objects to you, as well as 2 non-Archamental pet summons, Summon Creature and Summon Behemoth, that will call a hostile creature, or behemoth, to you, and requires the charm only an enchanter can bring. Otherwise, you're pretty much boned. And finally, this is the last one, but it's my favorite, and it's called Weaponized Object. And what this will do is it will summon a random object to you that will change depending on what area you're in, so you can basically have something to throw at your enemy. And I feel like it's gonna be like you're gonna be like summon, it's gonna be like woo, and you're gonna be like ah. I mean, this one has the potential to cause a whole lot of laughs and be very hilarious. I mean, how hilarious would it be to be in a castle and get approached by a guard and summon a hairbrush to beat him with? I mean, yeah, gonna be a good time depending on how creative they are with this one. But that's all there really is for Summoner, so let's take a look at and add all this up and see how it works. And I'm gonna get the bad out of the way first, because this job does not seem bad. This job seems like it's gonna have a whole lot of potential. But from a design point of view, from the point of view of a gamer who's been gaming his entire life and who has played an abundance of summoners both in video games and in tabletop games, this version of Summoner from a completely aesthetics point of view, I wanna put that out there, it's completely aesthetic, but it seems staggeringly generic. And I know that's not something that like really makes a difference. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't. It's just, it comes down to personal preference. But for me, I mean, cloth armor, staffs, fire, earth, air, water elementals, and on top of that, fire is your DPS, water is your heals, earth is your tank. I mean, you really can't get more generic. And there's so much you can do with a summoner. There are so many interesting paths that you can take it in. I mean, I hope they get super creative with the abilities that we haven't seen yet, or at least give them a very unique aesthetic, especially when it comes to the Archamentals, because as it stands right now, from a completely aesthetics point of view, it just seems very humdrum. But I mean, this is, like I said, I know this is like kind of ridiculous to bring up, but I mean, this has really been on my mind lately since I'm working on a video where I'm discussing the aesthetics of class design. So that just may be why I'm bringing this up here and why it popped so much to me. So watch out for that, because this would definitely come up there. But let's move on and look at it from a gameplay perspective, because from a gameplay perspective, Summoner looks like it's going to be very proficient. And not to mention that you're going to have your own personal little tank and your own personal little healer. So Summoner also has the potential to be an amazing solo job. And I know that's not what a lot of people who are interested in Pantheon are looking for. But I mean, really, unless the Archamentals are really weak or you are made of literal paper, I mean, let's face it, you're going to have a lot easier time out there walking around the world than almost any other job, which also means that this job, on the bright side, will be great to have tied to a gathering class, since it's going to be a lot safer to be out there on your own, gathering plants and quarrying stone. I mean, it's likely going to be really good for parties as well, because it definitely has the abilities that are based on being in a party, but you can't deny that this does have a lot of solo player written on it. But I mean, the more I did read about Summoner, the more interesting it did become. If nothing else, just as an alt, because right now I am rolling an Enchanter at launch, but Summoner is looking incredibly tempting, even if it's a little bit aesthetically boring. But what do you think? Are you planning on taking up summoning as your class? Am I wrong to call this a super generic class from an aesthetic point of view? I want to hear your thoughts, so let's talk about it below. And with that, I'm actually done with mages. And next time, I'm going to move on and talk about Ranger. If you want to know more about Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, or Pledge, the site is linked below along with my social media in case you want to follow me there. And of course, as per the usual, it has been a hoot. Until next time. Have fun.